So now that we have almost all of the implementation done for our buttons, I want to go ahead and start setting up the other buttons. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the prefab that we already have to go ahead and position the other buttons. Now, I don't care if you match up the exact colors in your game as they have in the original Simon game. You can use whatever colors you want. Just make them 4 distinct colors. Remember, implementation, not replication. So we'll go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and copy the transform component. I'll just go ahead and delete it. Duplicate the button. Go ahead and paste in the values. There we go. And change the color. Now, because I am so creative, I am just going to copy it. And we'll take that one. Somewhere a little lighter. And we also need a sound as well. Make sure that you assign a distinctive sound to it. So where are my sounds? Right here. Can't remember. I think I was using waves. Sure. Go ahead. We'll use this one. Which one was that? Trap 0. Don't know what it sounds like, but it really doesn't matter at this point. So there we go. Go ahead. Make sure you got all 4 of your buttons done. I'm going to go ahead and start this up. There we go. Never mind, Simon. We're going to make a game with music. Okay, we're going to go ahead and fast forward a bit, get these other buttons done. There we go. And we still need sounds. I've got a trap. Sure, a pickup sounds great. Yellow is going to be a pickup. This one here. And we'll use achievement for blue. There we go. We should have all 4 of our buttons done. They should all be different. That's a little long. You probably could actually make a music game out of this after, but that's something to look into a little bit later. Maybe it's one of your projects, maybe a midterm or something. But anyway, we're done that. We've got all our buttons set up. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And now we want to start looking at arrays. So I'm going to shrink this up and go into my game manager script. And let's take a look at arrays. There's a few ways we can define arrays in C#. One is just to simply come in and say, let's make these public so we can see them in the inspector. We could say public, I don't know, int. Let's make an int array. And we'll just call it my ints. And we can go ahead and define the values right at the start. So let's do 12. There we go. So there we made some integers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got 5 integers here. If we went ahead, well, we need the semicolon at the end. Save this off. We're going to make a game manager game object here as well, but we'll just go ahead and make it an empty. You could just drag it onto the Simon. Really, you could just put it on anything, but I like to have my own separate game object for my scripts. I'm just going to call it game manager. Put the game manager script on it. And here we go. Here's that list of ints we made. So the size is 5. Remember we said that right here, the integers. There's 5 of them total. And of course we have all the elements. Now with integers, take note that it actually starts counting at 0. So this first one, as far as indexes go, these are called elements over here, but think of it as index. So index 0 is equal to 12. Index 1 is equal to 14. Index 2 is equal to 17, and so on and so on. And of course, we come over here and we take a look at it. It's the same order. So this is index 0, index 1, index 2. And we can also debug these out. Don't really need to, because when you start it up, we can change it. But let's just go ahead and take a look at one. So to access one of those, we go ahead and use these square braces. And I'm going to go for 2. And remember, it starts at 0. So this is 0, 1, 2. So I'm actually accessing this one. And if we go ahead, jump over here, same thing, element 2, 17. So if we go ahead and hit play, we should get a 17 that pops up. Great. It's pretty easy, right? Jump back in. Let's say you want to change one of these values during runtime. We can simply just go in and say my ints. And let's grab the one that we want. Let's do 2 again. And let's change it to, I don't know, 1,000. I'm going to go ahead and save that off. And take note over here, it's still at 17. When we start it back up, it should update to 1,000, as well as printing 1,000 out here. Now, there are a couple of other ways to do it. Let's go ahead and just remove this component. Let's say you don't have values that you know you want to assign right away. You can come in and just say that my ints is equal to new, the int, and specify a size here. Let's just say 5. Now you can do it that way. And of course, if we come back in, take the game manager script, drop it on. We know that the size is 5 because we've told it that right here in between the square brackets. And when we start it up, we're still accessing the second one, and we're changing it to 1,000 because of this line here in our start. So what if you don't know the size when you first start off up here? Well, you can simply have it like that at the start. And then somewhere down in your code, maybe you're looking through pulling stuff out of a database or something like that. And you're like, oh, look, I've got 10 students in this database. So that's how big it has to be. Well, you can come in and say my ints is equal to new int and put it in here. Of course, you don't have to use the number. Maybe, like I said, the number of students coming in was 10. There's a variable for it. So you could save it there somewhere in your code. And if we went ahead and I just want to remove this, you should be able to hit reset and have it automatically update for you. But just to be sure, I want to go ahead and do it this way. So it starts off at 0. We're going to go ahead, and as soon as it hits that start method, it should raise it to, well, we went to 10. Oh, that's right, because we actually had 10 students. So we see that it went out, and of course, we're still manipulating number 2 in the start method to 1,000. And that is showing as well. And that's all great, but in Unity, I tend to do it a little bit different if I'm using arrays. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get rid of all of this. And let's actually take a look at a real example. So I want to go ahead and get those buttons and put them in array. So again, instead of using int, I'm going to use button because that's the type of data that I want to store. I'm going to call it button, and I'm just going to end it there. Now remember, because we see the square brackets, we know this means that it's going to be array, and the array is going to be buttons. Right now, I'm just going to leave it public. We can change it to private with serialized field. Actually, no, at this stage in the game, you should be more comfortable with these tags. So we're going to go ahead and use the serialized field, and I did not want public in there. Let's go ahead and we'll fix that. So serialized field, we're going to keep these private because there's no reason to access these outside of this script. And let's make sure I actually spelt button as opposed to buttoon. There we go. So we'll come in. I'm going to let this update. There we go. And we notice that the size is 0. Now we could just type 4 in, give us 4 of them, and drag each button over individually. But Unity has this nice little lock up here. So let's click it. And that means we're locking the inspector. So no matter what we click on, it's still going to be displaying the inspector for the game object that we locked it on, which was the game manager. So now I can come in and click all of the buttons. So click the top one, hold shift, click the bottom one, and I can drag them all in over top of button. And you see that little green plus sign? Let go of it and it'll add them all automatically. But take note that it adds them in the order that you have them up here. So if there is a specific order and you don't want to rearrange it up here, just go ahead and drag them individually. There's only 4. This is really only handy if you have, like 100 or something like that of them. And you can go ahead and easily click and highlight them all. But once you have them all done, let's go ahead, turn it off, hit save. Go into our script one more time. And in start, I want to go ahead and let's just do a quick for loop in start to show all of the game object names. So we can iterate through an array by using a for loop. So let me go ahead, we'll put the for loop in, and then I'll go over how it works. All right, so the for loop. This line up here dictates how often we're going to run the code that is in between these parentheses. So we start off by going ahead and creating some sort of counter. Now this is just something to increment as we're counting through our buttons. And we're going to say keep looping through as long as this counter that we've defined, which we're starting off at 0, is less than the length of the buttons. Now this is just a property of the actual button array itself. So if we hit dot and LE length, and that just tells it exactly how many there are. In this case, it's going to go ahead and notice that there are 4 attached. So it's going to return 4. Now keep in mind, like I said, the first element is 0. So you're getting 0 to 3. But the length itself is 4. So as we go through here, every loop, it's also going to increase that counter by 1. Remember we went over the plus plus sign in class. That means go ahead and increase this variable by 1. So it starts off in the first loop. It does whatever's in here with the value of 0. Then it's going to go through with the value of 1, which is still less than the length. It'll run it again. It'll come back up. A value of 2, run it again. Come back up. A value of 3, that's still less than the length. The length value, which is 4. It does it again. It'll come back. It's 4. It's no longer less than 4. So it's going to stop. So here's where we're going to debug out the name. So we'll just come in and say button. And we want to go ahead and get the index of the one we're currently working on, which we can get from the CNT value. And we're just going to say dot name. And that should get the name of the game object it is attached to. So let's go ahead. We'll save that off. I'm going to come back into Unity. I'm just going to go ahead and hit clear, even though I know it does clear when we start. We'll start it up. And there we go. Green, red, yellow, blue. The same order. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that if you try to access a value or an index beyond this range, so take note, our last one is element 3. So if we try to do something with element 4, we are going to get an error. So let's say debug.log. Oh, we don't have to do debug. Let's just say button. And we're going to go with 4. And we're going to make it a new button. Now, button's actually a mono behavior, so that's not going to work exactly like we want it, but it's going to demonstrate that if we try to access button 4, which does not exist, we do get an error for it. And it's going to say that the index is out of range. So this yellow error is because we're trying to instantiate a new mono behavior, and that's not the way we do it. The important part here is the red part. Index out of range. Well, that's it for arrays. Go ahead, let me know down below if you have any other questions about arrays. If not, we'll go on and just keep moving forward. So if you like the video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. It really does help me out here on YouTube. And go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I can be a pretty chatty guy over there when I'm not walking through a forest or being stalked by eagles and falcons, lions, tigers, and bears.